I never believed there was one code of morality for a public and another for a private man. Thomas Jefferson. Last weekend, the Justice Department released millions of additional pages, along with thousands of additional photographs, of the Epstein files. The little bit that I have seen so far absolutely staggers the imagination and thoroughly sickens the stomach. And Donald Trump is far from an innocent bystander. He is neck-deep in filth and criminality. No wonder Trump tried so hard to keep the files hidden and is now about to start a war with Iran to keep the American people distracted, hoping they will not pay attention to what is in those files. If the American people see what's in the files, Trump is toast. No person with any sense of decency could ever support this debauched bully in any shape, manner, or form ever again. And if anyone in MAGA or evangelicalism continues to stand with Trump, it means that they truly have no conscience and are just as debauched in heart as Trump is. The first public information detailing some of what's in the just-released Epstein files that I saw came from podcaster and former decorated Green Beret Nate Cornacchia. His podcast is called Valhalla VFT. He obtained copies of the files and read some of them on his podcast almost immediately following their release. I will provide readers with excerpts from the files he read in this column today. I caution you that some of the details in these files are extremely nauseating. Nate Cornacchia. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. And I'm sure you're all well aware of the biggest story in the news today. Yes, the files are back with a vengeance. Yes, the Department of Justice yesterday put out another massive drop of the e-files. Try not to use that name because it turns out Google, Meta, TikTok, and all the social media platforms are trying to limit and censor this story. And who's implicated this time in the new files released? Well, yes, the usual suspects, of course, Trump, Gates, Clinton. But we've got some new characters to the PDF roster that just popped up. And Elon Musk, George H.W. Bush, pretty wild stuff. And I got to tell you guys, the new files are absolutely disgusting. So, trigger warning as we work our way through these documents. Let's just jump into it. We're going to first, of course, start with President Donald J. Trump. Yes, the guy who, as MAGA will tell you, is nowhere in the Epstein files. There's no one who's accused him of anything, right? Let's find out what the new files have to say. So, this is going to be the biggest story of everything that's dropped so far. And also, guys, it's 3 million documents people are still sifting through. This is just the gross that people have found so far. And I will have to censor a lot of what I'm saying here, just again, because of YouTube, and the stuff is just disgusting. So, first complainant here. Victim Redacted reported an unidentified female friend who was forced to perform oral S on President Trump approximately 35 years ago in New Jersey. The friend told Alexis that she was approximately 13 to 14 years old when this occurred, and the friend allegedly bit President Trump while performing the act. The friend was allegedly hit in the face after she laughed about it. The friend said she was also abused by E. So, not off to a great start with allegations by a 13-year-old child. Okay, more allegations from a different victim that says here, at age 16, while modeling, caller attended 8 parties at E's New York residence. On one occasion, caller reported that she was sexually assaulted by E. On another occasion, 2 twin brothers, Alan and Orrin, and these brothers are going to become very relevant to these allegations here in a second, lured caller and her friend upstairs, but they escaped back downstairs. Caller stated that Orrin Ard, her best friend, and a third brother, Tal Ard, a 14-year-old girl named Victim Redacted. Caller named other individuals involved in big orgy parties with her, other young girls, and older Victoria's Secret models, including Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Online complainant reported that she was a victim and witness to a S trafficking ring at the Trump Golf Course in Rancho Palos Verdes, California, between 1995 to 1996. Complainant reported Maxwell as the madam and broker for the sex parties, clients of whom included E., Robin Leach, and Donald Trump. Complainant reported participating in orgies and that some girls went missing, rumored to have been murdered and buried at the facility. Complainant reported being threatened by Trump's head of security that if she ever talked or went on there, what she saw, she would end up as fertilizer in the back 9 holes like the other C words. This is insane. Complainant claims to have a video of high-profile sex parties dealing with cartels and having witnessed Robin Leach strangle a young girl to death at a party. So yeah, that's all really, really bad. And why is this one so bad for Trump? Well, it turns out because the 3 brothers listed here that are being accused alongside Donald Trump. Who are they? Oh yes, wealthy Florida brothers face trial over alleged decades of sexual abuse. Prosecutors allege that real estate trio Tal, Alon, and Orrin Alexander assaulted and trafficked dozens of women. So yes, the 3 brothers who are in this story alongside Trump and Clinton just happen to be being prosecuted for trafficking. So yes, if it wasn't a bad enough day to be MAGA already, yeah, it's looking even worse, as it looks like President Trump's name appears 5,362 times in the Epstein files. But we're not done with Trump yet, because more documentation coming out that pretty much shows he's completely blackmailed by our greatest ally. All right. So what we have here is a FBI reporting document, and might be a little bit hard to see, but I'll read it for you. The interesting stuff here about Alan Dershowitz. Yes, he's a lawyer and friend of Donald Trump. It says Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz. CHS learned that Dershowitz influenced many students from wealthy families. For example, Josh Kushner and Jared Kushner were both his students. Dershowitz told CHS that if they were young again, he would be holding a stun gun as an Israeli intelligence Mossad agent. CHS believes Dershowitz was co-opted by Mossad, subscribed to their mission. And as we move over here, it says, CHS advised that this was a real collusion story. Trump has been compromised by our greatest ally, and Kushner is the real brains behind the organization and this presidency. And from what we've seen in Kushner's involvement in the new Gaza project and everything going on in the Middle East, that actually does make a lot of sense. So a lot of people are theorizing, why did the Department of Justice release these files? They are so bad for Trump and everybody involved. And what a lot of people think is this. Now, a lot of people were expecting we were going to attack Iran last week, and when that didn't happen, people wondered why. Well, here's the theory, is that the reason why these new files just dropped that are super damning to Trump and his buddies is that Trump refused to attack Iran. That is why the files were released today. Basically, Trump refused the blackmail from our greatest ally, and they decided to release the files to punish him. I personally do not believe that, and here's why. Because Trump has demonstrated that he's willing to do literally anything that Bibi says. Anything that our greatest ally wants, they get. Why would he, all of a sudden, knowing all of this blackmail that was on him, decide, this is where I put my foot down, this is where I'm going to have integrity? Does that make any real sense to anyone? No, I don't think so. What I think happened is that the Department of Justice, whether on accident or on purpose, released a bunch of files unredacted that were probably supposed to be redacted, and now we're seeing behind the curtain. But that doesn't mean the story is necessarily over, as we see here. U.S. military tells key Middle East ally to prepare for attack on Iran. In addition to military targets, Trump is considering strikes on senior Iranian leaders with aim of spurring the overthrow of the Iranian government, as of 18 hours ago. Now, why might we start a war with Iran in the next couple days? I don't know. Maybe another big distraction that we need. We'll see. All right, moving on to the other big names in the story. The next, Bill Gates. Yes, Bill Gates, disgusting Bill Gates. He is also in a lot of trouble. Yes. Bill Gates accused of twisted plot to drug his own wife after sex with girls. Let's see what's going on here. All right, so we're not going to read the whole thing, but I'll summarize it real quick before we get to the main part here. It turns out, Bill Gates contracted an STD after one of his fun little trips to Ease Island and gave it to his former wife, Melinda Gates. He then wanted to concoct a plan to drug his wife and give her antibiotics so that she wouldn't find out. And he says down here, to add insult to the injury, you then implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD, your request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your penis. You also made it clear to me that I am not to refer to blank, the victim I'm sure, as that is another topic that must remain between the two of us. So yeah, I think it's probably time for Bill Gates to get hauled before Congress, testify, and probably put in prison, just like literally everybody that's involved in this. I'll skip over the portions of the files dealing with more Elon Musk details. You can watch the video yourself and hear them. But we also have another new character that we weren't expecting. Yes, another U.S. president, George H.W. Bush. And this gets really, really dark. New Epstein document states George Bush I, Sr., allegedly RD, a male victim, child, and witnessed a type of ritualistic sacrifice. So here you go. Trigger warning. And if you've got a weak stomach, you probably want to fast forward through this part of the video. But here it is. First of all, from and to is redacted here, which, why? Why would you redact this government? I think we should be able to see exactly who's talking here, shouldn't we? There's no victims involved in the from to in this conversation, but I digress. It says, thanks, blank. I didn't realize Bush R'd him too. Okay. Then it says, I'd like to add a few other points disclosed by the victim. He was a victim of a type of ritualistic sacrifice in which his feet were cut with a scimitar but left no scarring. On the yacht, he witnessed babies being dismembered, their intestines removed, and individuals eating feces from the intestines. He was also R'd by George Bush I. Now you might be thinking, there's no way, that is way, way too much. Sacrifices, murders. Well, the problem is the government came out today and admitted those things are in the files. Deputy Attorney General Blanche. Any depiction of CSAM or child pornography was obviously excluded, anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation, and finally, anything that depicts or contain images of death, physical abuse, or injury, also not produced. So there you go. Government straight up admitted there are pictures and videos of death in this. Okay, so what are we doing here? Now we know children were being sacrificed, and we know who the people were that are doing that, and the government is still redacting their names, and no one's being held accountable for that. Really? That's where we're at. Nate lists other names in the files that I'll skip over. Nate concludes, so here's where I'm at. I don't really care anymore that the main reason why they're not releasing the files is because they don't want to give up the political blackmail and leverage that they have on people all over the world. And it'll make America in a weaker position, leverage-wise, over other countries. I don't care. I don't care. Just put out the entire files unredacted and then arrest everybody involved, no matter how powerful they are. If they're Elon Musk, doesn't really matter. It's probably time that we have real accountability and we actually fix the system, because we now know that, yes, all the most powerful people in this country are partaking in child trafficking, and it's disgusting. Now, again, this is just the first initial drop of what people have worked their way through, and they are already, again, horrific. So, I would 100% expect us to see some type of major event, false flag or war, get kicked off to distract from the rest of these files. But we'll just have to wait and see. The Epstein files prove that for decades the State of Israel via Mossad has covertly taken almost complete control over the U.S. government, that the federal government is but a puppet entity of Israel, and that presidents from both parties have been and are being blackmailed by the Zionist state for the unspeakable crimes they have committed and which Israel, via Epstein's massive pedophile network, has the evidence of. In short, The U.S. Congress is bribed by the Israel lobby, and U.S. presidents are blackmailed by the Israeli Mossad. The files also prove that a huge number of America's most powerful and wealthiest men over the past 35 years are in reality some of the vilest, filthiest, most despicable, and most evil men of human history. And Donald J. Trump is smack in the middle of them. These men should spend the rest of their lives in prison, which would be too good for them. They should, but they won't. For one reason, Israel needs to keep these guys in their positions of power and influence, as without them, Israel loses much of its power and influence over the United States. Therefore, the 6 corporations that dominate the U.S. media and are controlled by Israel will do their very best, and they are very good at it, to hide this information from the American people. Uber-Zionist Larry Ellison has already snatched up CBS News, Paramount, and TikTok, and others that I'm not remembering off the cuff. Do you remember when Benjamin Netanyahu said that taking control of TikTok was priority number 1 for Israeli propaganda purposes? Well, he has succeeded. Since Ellison took over, facilitated and authorized by Donald Trump, TikTok is rapidly eliminating any and all content critical of Israel from its platform. For another reason, bewitched evangelicals will refuse to believe that Trump is the degenerate monster that he truly is. Their minds are as closed as a steel vault. They choose to close their minds. They choose to close their eyes. They choose to close their ears. And they choose to harden their hearts. My son-in-law shared an observation with me recently that I believe is spot on and explains why God has blinded the hearts and minds of evangelicals, and by doing so has allowed such wickedness to run rampant in our government. He compared evangelicals' rejection of Ron Paul's presidential candidacy in 2012 and their support for Donald Trump in 2016 to Old Testament Israel's rejection of the prophet Samuel and its acceptance and support of King Saul. I believe that is an apt analogy. I think Psalm 106:15 summarizes it best. And he gave them their request, but sent leanness into their soul. Dr. Paul was rejected by evangelicals specifically because he was not controlled by Israel. He was not Israel first. Blind support for Israel by evangelicals motivated them to vehemently reject Christ's golden rule, do unto others what you would have them do unto you, paraphrase, when Dr. Paul publicly committed to making the golden rule the centerpiece of his foreign policy as president. So much so that they did all they could to boo him off the stage in South Carolina when he made that commitment. Evangelicals clearly understood that to mean that under a Ron Paul presidency, America would not wage unconstitutional wars of aggression on behalf of Israel. This evangelicals could not stomach. Evangelicals did not merely reject Ron Paul in 2012, they rejected the fundamental tenet of the entire law of God as stated by Jesus himself. Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Matthew 7:12. Therefore God gave them what their hearts sought. He gave them the debauched, degenerate Donald Trump, just as God gave Israel the wicked King Saul after they stubbornly and willfully rejected the good and godly prophet Samuel. If enough of the American people actually see the contents of the Epstein files that have been released, they will demand Trump's removal from office and the prosecution of the men involved. That is an absolute certainty. The only question is how masterful the media will be in keeping the contents hidden and how successful Trump will be in distracting the attention of the American people from those files. A large-scale regional war with Iran might be Trump's distraction of choice for this purpose. Regardless, anyone with a heart to know now knows that the criminality buried in the Epstein files is worse than anyone thought, and the degeneracy of Donald Trump is worse than anyone thought.